Previamente, con Cena con Corredores.
Cuba, 1958. What was this time like?
It was a time of crisis.
Everything is great.
What better time than to put on a huge sports event to show to everybody outside of Cuba that everything is great? So the 26th of July movement realizes they need to make an impact.
Let's kidnap the most famous race car driver in the world, and that would only be Fangio.
They ask, who of you are Fangio? I'm Fangio.
Juan, you will have to come with us.
Race is over. It was tragic, ends very quickly, but Fangio does not race. What happens next?
Now comes how to free Fangio.
How do we let him out?
How to let him out.
So there's numerous reports that once the Grand Prix is over, it's time to return Fangio. He's not hurt. There are legitimate concerns from either Fangio or from the folks at the 26th of July movement that if they hand him to the police, to Batista's people might kill him as almost like a false flag operation to say like, oh, look what they did to Fangio, these evil rebels. So they went a long way to make sure it went to the Argentine ambassador.
Cuando Fangio lo van a liberar, él propone, incluso eso lo sugiere Fangio, que llamen al embajador de Argentina, que ya estaba preocupado, es decir, se habían mantenido en contacto con la embajada argentina, el movimiento 26 de julio, diciéndole que Fangio estaba bien, que no había problema.
By this point, police have to be everywhere. So how do you get him to the Argentine embassy?
Nobody would have imagined that that Fangio or anybody in the 26th of July movement had bases in Miramar.
Okay, so if you're going from Miramar to the Argentine embassy, this isn't a heavily patrolled area because there's no way this is where these kids are.
This is the Batistiano elite.
I see. So this is a safe drive.
It's very safe.
Yeah, it's too nice around here. They would never.
The embassy had a connection to sort of a halfway building that was off the radar for everybody.
Yes.
That they could do this sort of exchange with.
Yes,
Yeah.
and this apartment in the 11th floor was empty for some reason.
They called the Argentine ambassador ahead of time, and they almost met at like a middle ground office and picked him up and then drove him to the embassy where there was a whole media circus waiting for him.
Yeah, because what you want is to have all of the media attention on the entrega,
Okay.
the turnover of the hostage.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
That protects the hostage. Plus, if you somehow were trying to interrupt that, if you were Batista and you tried to interrupt it in a violent way, you're causing an international incident, right?
He's ushered to the Argentine embassy.
Yeah,
And he's safe.
yeah, he's safe, he's quiet, he's prepared to explain on his own words what's happened.
Yeah.
Batista was very worried about Fangio, indeed. And he said, okay, Fangio is free. Fangio, you can stay in Cuba 1 week, all inclusive.
We would call that hush money.
What is that?
That's when you offer somebody something so they don't tell everybody how bad it was when you got kidnapped in their country. Say, yeah, you stay right here. Yeah, but it's on us. It's on us.
Or just like a preemptive settlement, like when when a restaurant gives you a coupon.
Yeah, it's like, please don't sue us.
Yeah, to rat them out on the rat.
Here's an ice cream sundae.
This was Batista's ice cream sundae.
Yeah.
Was a week at the Nacional.
You know what's interesting is that we've met with people from literally all over the world about this episode. No one until you has told us that Batista tried to get him to stay behind. So the hush money aspect clearly didn't work. How is Batista perceived after all of this becomes public and just spreads like wildfire?
Well, Batista is going to continue to try and do everything he can to build up his image. But I do think it's like a turning point because internationally, now you have Fangio, who is not willing to denounce his captors. Fangio is not willing to embrace Batista. And so abroad, you have a kind of shift in the acceptability of all of the coverage in the press that is reporting the truth about Batista's dictatorship. When he was kidnapped, the most famous magazine, Bohemia, and it was read across Latin America, they published an account of his kidnapping, and they interview him about his experience. You have a Fangio who is extremely admiring of the movement, and he feels like he contributed to it.
Wow.
You know,
Okay.
he was very proud of the fact that he was part of something.
It's important to know that when he's kidnapped, this is 1958, Argentina in 1958, not exactly the most stable place at the time. Juan Perón had just come out of power a few years earlier.
Through military coup.
Through military coup, obviously he and his wife Madonna. You know, but you can see where he's coming from because it's not, you know, we view this as Americans, but it's not like he was coming from a place that was smelling like roses either. So he probably had more sympathy for what they were doing than somebody like Carroll Shelby or Sterling Moss, who is British. Like all traditional Western democracies, they may not have the same sympathy that somebody like Juan Fangio would.
Right.
So.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, live from...
One of the purposes of this project is to kind of remind people who Fangio was and how good and how important to the sport he was. So if I don't know anything from that era, what is the Ed Sullivan Show? How important is that?
It was probably the most important TV show in America. They introduced the Beatles, the Stones to Americans, had high-profile guests. Big show, probably had the highest audience ratings at the time.
Sullivan offered to be in his TV show.
And Ed Sullivan was the New York late night show of that time, kind of one of the originals.
He was like the Conan O'Brien of late night.
Fangio was with Dempsey, was the world champion. Jack Dempsey, for Argentinian people, he's very famous.
Jack Dempsey is one of the best boxers of all time.
Yeah. And Fangio was a boxer also.
Was he really?
Really?
Yeah, for a short time.
So if we were going to do a recreation of Ed Sullivan, which one of us would play him?
He's kind of mumbled his speeches.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was mumbled, he was awkward.
Yeah, not particularly articulate. Obvious.
Good looking or?
No.
I understand why you picked him. So if the people who own the license to the clip of Jack Dempsey and Juan Manuel Fangio being on the Ed Sullivan Show, if they wanted $3,000 for that clip, would you pay that to show that clip?
Impossible.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
Smart.
So you know what I don't know, Fernando and Ryan, is if we just sort of show it existing as a clip that we can't afford, if that makes it fair use.
Fangio, world champion racing driver, is kidnapped by Cuban rebels in a daring move to discredit the Batista regime by disrupting Havana's Sports Fiesta and Grand Prix race.
looks like you have a ton of Cuban Grand Prix artifacts. Can you kind of give us a background on some of this stuff?
Principally, we have a trophy here that the kidnappers by his own bring to Balcarce to give to Fangio in the early 90s. So the relation between them was a very friendly relation.
Él estuvo en Cuba creo que alrededor del año 88 y después en el año 92 fueron ellos allá. El recibimiento o el encuentro fue de amigos. Cuando triunfó la revolución en 1959, una de las primeras cosas que se hicieron fue pasarle una invitación a Fangio para que viniera a Cuba. Y él vino años después, pero también él invitó a los cubanos allá. Él los invitó a que fueran a Argentina.
Is it common for kidnappers to give you a trophy for kidnapping you?
I think it just happened in Fangio's life. That's a particular life of his. It's not common at all. Very friendly relation with the cards that they sent to each other. And from the 58, the kidnap time, until Fangio's death, was in some way represented by visiting Fangio Cuba, kidnappers visiting Argentina, Balcarce, having dinner in his house, and bringing all this stuff that maybe represents the honor that they feel of being part of Fangio history.
From his stronghold in the wild Sierra Maestre Mountains, Cuba's Fidel Castro emerged triumphant after 2 years of guerrilla warfare against the Batista regime. The revolution that began with Castro a fugitive, practically alone, landing with 82 followers, ended with the flight of dictator Fulgencio Batista and the entry into Havana of rebel forces to be acclaimed by the city. Now Batista has fled. A new leader is on the scene, Fidel Castro, in many ways an unknown quantity in his politics and policies, but certain to be dominant in Cuba's new era, just begun.
Post-1958 Cuban Grand Prix, what happens between Batista and Castro?
Castro essentially runs out the clock on the Batista military's attempts to bomb the hell out of this guerrilla insurgency and sort of end them through the air and also over land.
I mean, tourism collapses.
Right.
And one of the reasons is that Fangio happened.
The story of the Cuban Revolution and the victory of the insurgency is not one of this sort of like rising crest of adherents. The rebel army was never enormous. At its peak at the end, it had a few thousand people, and most of those folks had come in the final months.
Okay.
So really, a lot of this is Castro sort of running out the clock on the Batista government's efforts.
I mean, before he fled, December 22nd, a U.S. representative of the Eisenhower administration went to meet with Batista to persuade him to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And he refused.
Yeah. Wow.
You know?
Eventually, sort of military cohesion within Batista's fold begins to fall apart. The guerrilla front begins to expand, and after essentially the rebel army kind of defeats Batista's military in the center of the country, it's New Year's Eve, 1958, going on 1959, and Batista in the middle of the night decides to get on a plane and get out of Dodge.
These are first films of Fulgencio Batista, the ex-strongman of Cuba, enjoying retirement from public life at Ciudad Trujillo with Ruben, the eldest son of his 8-child family.
Hoy un 31 de diciembre, para celebrar el año, él debe haber quedado con esas culpas o esas buenas acciones, como él lo haya querido ver. Pero realmente yo pienso que la operación Fangio estaba por encima de todo eso. Cualquiera que haya sido joven a esa edad, como lo pude haber sido yo quizá, o ustedes hoy en día, lo que se hizo en ese momento fue una acción, puede ser suicida, loca, pero fue heroica.
Fangio was kidnapped in February of 1958, and in 11 months, Castro is now in power.
Yeah.
So the interesting part to me isn't that Castro and the 26th of July movement kidnapped Juan Fangio. What's interesting is that it worked. It's easy for us to sort of laugh at an international incident in sports in 1958 because of the novelty. Oh, this could never happen again. But we do have Formula One Grand Prix in countries where there is hostility. We have World Cup events, tennis events, golf events that are in fairly politically hot areas of the globe right now. Do you think it's realistic something like this could happen again?
Yes, there are certain places that if you have an incident like this, I think it would gain a lot of attention.
A missile attack on an oil depot just kilometres from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix has stopped practice and led to hours of meetings for drivers and teams.
If you have people who create the incident, like we had in Cuba in 1958, where the argument is not violence, the argument is about change and not making this person feel like a hostage, but making the person feel like a spokesperson for change, then you have a very positive possibility of understanding coming about, right?
Do you think if Lewis Hamilton got kidnapped, he'd be more famous here?
Oh, no, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
You need sensation to gain fame these days.
Yeah. Who do you think the easiest F1 driver would be to kidnap?
I know.
I'd say Yuki because he's so small.
Yeah.
You know, you could probably grab him.
He seems like he's gullible too.
Yeah, I can see him falling for
kind
it.
of gullible.
Yeah, like,
for it.
go over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Over here. At the time of Juan Fangio's kidnapping, you were a year and a half old?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Do you remember anything from that era, from that time?
No, of course not. I remember stories and my family talking about it. Everybody was extremely worried because nobody knew what was happening to Juan. Actually, he was trying to call, he was trying to be in touch with the family, and they say, we can do everything you ask, but you cannot be in touch with anybody. I mean, that is a rule.
Yeah. As you grew older, was the legend of the Cuban kidnapping told around the house?
Yes, of course. That was something also, one of the reasons why my uncle was thinking about retirement. He said, well, in 58, I have the kidnap, and say, well, the only way to abandon the Formula One races is if I go straight to the microphone and I say, this is my last race. And of course, his word, it was very important for him.
Yeah.
So he said, well, that was enough.
So to force himself to retire, he had to declare it.
Exactly.
So that he didn't look bad if he kept doing it.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And the kidnap, it was also one of the reasons.
Mira, en el transcurso de los años, yo he leído o cuando he publicado algo del secuestro de Fangio, hay personas que hablan o mal o dicen que fue una locura. Uno tiene que vivir la época que le toca. Por lo menos yo soy de ese criterio. El respeto a la vida de Fangio por parte de estos jóvenes fue la primicia, fue lo primero, fue la voluntad. Y que Fangio haya reconocido, la dijo Fangio, they are my friends, my kidnapper friends.
It worked. And the whole operation changed people's perceptions of what was happening in Cuba. It was a very positive result. And nobody in Cuba could also turn away from the reality, because when you have a foreign, sexy superstar who has been supposedly assaulted by the opposition, speaking in favor, effectively, of the opposition, then you have to readjust everything that you've been taking for granted until that point.
Do you know of any other stories of world champion drivers getting kidnapped?
No.
So this isn't like a prior concern.
No, it was quite unusual and well thought out.
Yeah.
Because it worked.
Name a driver who was kidnapped as part of a revolutionary government takeover.
Formula One driver?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Name a driver who was kidnapped as part of a revolutionary government takeover.
Absolutely cannot.
You don't know that one?
I have no idea.
There's a handful of them.
If you could describe Cuba 1958 in one word, what would it be?
Crisis.
Maybe the word is optimistic, because Cubans have always been deeply optimistic.
If you could describe the Juan Fangio kidnapping in one word, what would it be?
Valiente.
¿Cómo para mí fue una tarea? Una tarea dura. Successful. All around.
Amazing.
Unusual.
Accurate.
Pero but in fact is a flamingo coming to Havana and reach from Puerto Rico on a pirate ship. You don't know where do we go. The birds of the jungle chasing fortune and fame, but Juan is flamingo is not walking the same. Balaje de la flauta en banana for fun. Es una vida loca and chasing the sun. Guitarra. But in fact is a flamingo. But in fact is a flamingo. Música rosa with a style and fashion. El ritmo del flamenco is heard to Japan. Embalaje de la flauta en banana for fun. Es una vida loca, keep chasing the sun. Juanito, Juanito, Juanito. Juanito, Juanito, Juanito. Guitarra.
We are shooting where a racetrack used to be. Sort of like Cuba.
Cuba. Yeah. And this is the track that Fangio, Sterling Moss, Phil Hill, all these guys raced at. And it's in Cuba.
Cuba. Probably the original pavement.
Yeah. See all the checker marks there. It's pretty cool.
Don't repave 17.
Respect the bumps. Hashtag Cuba.
Traffic's killer around here.
Huh?
Killer traffic.
So that's the Mercedes-Benz W196, driven by Juan Fangio here at the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Germany. And obviously that's why I'm here in Germany, so this is clearly a business expense in my visit to Germany. It's a business expense. Fangio, that car.
Okay.
All right.
Try it real quick. See what we got.
Like mint or pineapple? What do you think? It's mint.
Okay. Okay.
Or like a green tea. No, it's mint.
Okay. Okay. And then peanut.
I'm in on the peanut.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Weird combo.
We made it. We went to Australia and we enjoyed ourselves.
Yeah. We're on a road trip.